Video games have always in some capacity let the player make choices while playing. In fact, it's one of the things that make the entertainment form stand out from the alternatives. It's interactive. Of course, there's always the basic choices that every game has. Do you choose to go this route and be stealthy, or take the alternative and kill everyone? But RPGs such as the Fallout franchise and games like Heavy Rain or Telltale, rest in peace, games and many more have during the last decade or so ushered in an era where there are more choices than just how to tackle an area full of enemies. When we're talking about player choice today, we're not really talking about creating a loadout or using one weapon over another. We're talking about choices significant to the story and choices that have genuine consequences. That being said, what does all this have to do with The Last of Us Part 2? Hey stragglers and tourists, my name is TheiPadCat, and in today's video, we're discussing just that. Will there be player choice in The Last of Us Part 2? And if so, to what extent? How could it affect the game? How have Naughty Dog handled choices in previous games? And finally, what do I think about it? Well, like our chubby friend in Lincoln, Massachusetts once said,
let's get on with it.
For starters, will there even be player choice in The Last of Us Part 2? Yes. Breakthrough Gaming did a video a while back going over that Naughty Dog had confirmed in an interview with Eurogamer that there indeed will be choices in the game that have different outcomes. If you want to watch that video, I'll try to remember to link it in either a video card or in the description. Anyways, what does that really mean? The example used by Eurogamer was that it was optional to kill the mini-boss at the end of the E3 demo, and that would have some sort of implication. That to me is very diffuse. A choice always has an outcome, but the majority of them, or at least the ones we make in video games, are usually fairly insignificant. Does killing him mean we simply get a new weapon? Just personal satisfaction or some greater impact on the story? Well, we don't really know. And I don't expect to get a confirmation until the game is released. However, we can always speculate. As I said in the beginning of the video, usually when we talk about player choice, today, we aren't talking about simple choices that every single game has, like deciding where to go first or if we take out some enemies quietly or not. No, it's usually referring to choices that impact the game's story. Choices that may even lead to different endings. And I just can't see that happening in any major way in The Last of Us Part 2. The production value of a Naughty Dog game is insane. They take years and years to just record the motion capture scenes with the actors, and then the effort that goes into the extreme detail is just too much for there to be any drastically different outcomes to any choice. I mean, for every choice, the story has to branch off in at least 2 directions. Even if there is only 4 stages of choice in the entire game, by the time you make your 4th choice, there are about 30 potential different decisions you could have made along the way. That would be like Naughty Dog making the same game several times over. This, of course, assumes that the choices do indeed lead to significant outcomes, like changing the ending. It could always be several choices that just end up leading to the same ending anyways. But then, what's the point of having them in the first place? Let's take a look at how it's been handled in previous Naughty Dog games. The Last of Us Part 1's main story was strictly linear and didn't really have any player choice despite deciding what items to craft and which way to go about taking out your enemies. Then, in Left Behind, there were a few, but very insignificant choices during select dialogue between Ellie and Riley, where you could, for example, ask Riley either why she left or what Marlene said about Anna. Or you could decide whether or not Ellie should try out some whiskey and what theme the photo booth should use for your pictures. In the end, those only ended up affecting the story in the very moment they took place, and didn't really lead to any other outcome later down the road. Uncharted 4 was very similar in the sense that you could pick what you wanted Nate to say in certain scenes, and so on. Uncharted The Lost Legacy did something interesting though, and that was that you could actually do a lot of the objectives within the story in any order, thus enabling you to do things at your own pace and allowing for more exploration. But in the end, it was a linear game all the same, with one beginning and one end. That is something I think we could see in The Last of Us Part 2. We've already heard from Naughty Dog at E3 during their panel that there will be much larger open environments than just the linear paths of The Last of Us Part 1. I could totally see this mini-boss at the end of the E3 demo being some sort of an optional objective that is its own isolated story with its own outcome, then and there. Kill him and you find a note on his body with some Seraphied lore, or spare him and he'll be in some future encounter and make some simple remarks to your previous fight. I don't see it going a lot deeper than that. But let's just cast aside what I think is likely for a second, and let's just pretend that there indeed will be big and impactful choices in the story. What are the problems with this? Well, it would essentially destroy the personality of whatever character that you are controlling and making the choice for. That choice is going to be based on your morals and opinions, and not that of Ellie and Joel. Just imagine how out of character it would have been for Joel to, let's say, not execute the Firefly escorting him out of the hospital, and instead handing him a medkit to stop the bleeding he caused. Sure, that might have been something I would have personally picked if given the choice, but it would totally ruin his character in favor of having a more interactive story. The Last of Us is more of a taken on a ride type of game than an RPG sandbox like Fallout. It would not be as immersive if we have almost a fourth wall breaking choice mechanic where you somehow are a part of the story and the universe and are controlling these people rather than just seeing the events through their eyes. Ellie and Joel would not feel like Ellie and Joel if we have the ability to make them do something they would never do. Another problem to having impactful choices in a game like The Last of Us is establishing a canon and the potential for a sequel. If there are drastically different routes to take and then drastically different endings, which one is canon? Why, that's an easy problem to solve, TheiPadCat. Why are you even talking about it? Naughty Dog can just pick one. Well, what is the point of having choice there in the first place then, if there always was going to be one definitive story? And what of the people that chose differently than that of the canon path and ending? How will they feel when the sequel rolls in and is based on totally different choices than they made? The developers of Life is Strange found themselves in this position when they were going to make the sequel to the first game. There were two very different endings to that game, which would have been impossible to do one sequel to. And they didn't want to alienate the portion of the people that picked one of the endings, so they ended up doing a sequel with a totally new story and characters. And as we know from the man himself, that is not possible in The Last of Us, as there is no The Last of Us without Joel and Ellie. No, I don't believe in player choice in The Last of Us Part 2, from neither a technical/production or story perspective. So to summarize, The Last of Us Part 2 will have choice in some capacity, as confirmed in the Eurogamer interview, though how or to what extent is unknown currently. I believe it is unlikely that Part 2 will play like a Telltale game with drastically different paths and endings due to how much work it would be for Naughty Dog, and the fact that it presents several problems in the story itself with the personalities of characters and the canon story. I believe that the most likely implementation of choice is like in Uncharted The Lost Legacy, where you could do certain objectives in any order, and possibly choice in isolated scenes with little consequence in the greater story, like in previous games and the example I mentioned about the mini-boss in the E3 demo. But that's just what I think. I was thinking of adding a new section to the end of these videos where you guys get to vote on the topic for the next video. I'll try it out once here in this video and you can tell me what you think about it in the comments down below. Oh, and make sure you join the Discord server and follow me on Twitter. Links are in the description. Anyways, what do you think? Do you agree with my points? Disagree? To what degree do you think we'll see choice in part 2? And do you even like the idea of it? Tell me in the comments down below and let's discuss it. And until next time, have a great day.